Good morning, welcome to today's meeting of the Audit Committee. I am Councillor Alan Alvey, Chairman of the Audit Committee. I would now like to hand over to Democratic Services to read the housekeeping note.
Please note this meeting is being broadcast live on the Council's website and on YouTube. It will remain available for a minimum of 12 months. Please use your microphone when speaking and turn it off when you've finished. Please turn any mobile devices to a silent setting. If the fire alarm rings, please can everyone leave the room immediately using the nearest fire exit. Do not use the lift. Please go to the fire assembly point located at the bottom of the car park by the garages.
Okay, please would members introduce themselves during the meeting if not already introduced. Apologies. We have apologies from Councillor Richard Young and Councillor Kate Grisell, who says she might be a bit late, but I take it as apologies at the moment. Okay, item 1, minutes. Can we please approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 31st of October? Great, thank you. Declarations of interest. Does any member have any interest to declare on an item on the agenda? No. Okay. Public participation. There are no public present. So we come on to item 4, which is the audit results report. So I'm going to ask Ernst & Young, Simon, to run us through his report.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. So the report that you have in front of you is our audit results report for 24-25. That starts on page 5 of papers. The purpose of the report is to provide a summary of the work we undertake, to be able to issue an opinion on the 24-25 financial statements, and to report by exception on the Council's value for money arrangements. We'll talk about the financial statements here as we go through the audit results report. We'll pick up value for money in the later item on the Auditor's annual report. So, subject to receipt of final documents after this committee meeting, we intend to issue a disclaimed opinion on the Council's 24-25 financial statements this afternoon. To be very clear with the committee, the only reason the opinion is disclaimed is as a result of the national arrangements to reset and recover local public audit, and we've talked about that at previous committees. So the accounts were disclaimed in 22-23, which necessarily means there is an amount of time that needs to be worked through before we're able to get back to giving assurance. The areas where we have and have not been able to obtain assurance are set out in the summary of assurances at Appendix B on pages 38 and 39 of the papers. The good news is this year we have been able to undertake all planned procedures. So in terms of this year, this has been an audit as normal, and I think the committee can take assurance from that. We will also clearly be able to issue the opinion before the statutory backstop date of the 27th of this month. The fact that we're able to undertake all planned procedures this year is an improvement, and that does represent progress from the prior year. As I say, the only reason that we're still in a disclaimer situation is this disclaimer in 22-23 and the brought forward impact of that. The Council's progress in rebuilding assurance is in accordance with the National Audit Officer's suggested timeline, and we set that out in Appendix A on page 37 of papers. However, it's really important that the progress made this year continues into next. We'd like to be in a position next year where we are giving you a qualified opinion. I know qualified opinion doesn't sound great, but that is a necessary first step from disclaimer. So it's important that we deliver all planned procedures again next year. Arrangements to support the audit are reasonable overall, so we've produced a RAG-rated summary of arrangements on page 13 of papers. Timeliness of the statements was good, they were published on time, and the quality of the financial statements in terms of the level of misstatement is very good. So we have not found a lot from the audit, but there were some issues that I want to highlight. So the draft financial statements were published in June, but they didn't contain entries for IFRS 16, which is a new accounting standard. We flagged that as an upcoming issue in our prior 2-year audit results report, and it was a significant risk in our audit plan. That said, when we got the statements with IFRS 16 entries in, it's been done well, and that's not universally true across councils this year. So this is an area that's caused difficulty for councils. Its adoption is quite onerous, and the job that was made by the council when it was done was good based on our work. We didn't commence the audit until November, which was a conscious decision. That's relatively late. At that point in time, the statement still didn't have IFRS 16 entries in. So the first 3 weeks of the audit, officers were distracted to an extent by needing to address that. That impacts on how quickly and efficiently we can deliver. Again, context there, the finance team have been good and responsive throughout the audit. So when we've had the finance team's attention, they've been good. The quality of responses are good. They work well with us. Final, I suppose, issue we'd highlight is the transactional data that we take from the council systems that allows us to do our detailed testing. We still have issues with that transactional data containing a lot of internal recharges that we need to net out to be able to get back to genuine transactions to allow testing. On that point, we raised a recommendation in the prior year, which we repeated in the current year. That's been accepted by management, and I think management's response to that is reasonable. We recognise that improvements have been made in this area, but there is still some work to do. Significant further improvement would require bigger changes to systems, and that would be more expensive and time-consuming, and local government reorganisation is on the horizon. So management's response that we will continue to work to do our best with this, I think is reasonable. I would be clear, though, it does make it more time-consuming to do the audit for everyone. So it is somewhere that we need to continue, something we need to continue to focus on within the overall context of other things to be done. In terms of our risks and our findings, there's a summary on page 11. I don't really want to go through that in any great depth because I don't think there are any findings that I want to draw to your attention. As I have said, the quality of the financial statements is very good and we only have minimal adjustments to make. I will stop there and take questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions? I have a number of points. Alan, yes. Councillor O'Sullivan.
I've noticed we've always had problems with valuation because we've always seemed to vary, have a different interpretation of the valuations. Is this IFR, whatever it's called, IFRS 16, brought more of a focus to that?
So, no, IFRS 16 is unconnected to that. So this is around leasing arrangements. So at a high level, it means that arrangements that were previously viewed as operating leases may now be viewed as leases where you recognise an asset on your balance sheet. So you recognise a right of use asset and an attendant liability. There's a lot of work to do to implement it because you need to go through all of your leases and other contractual arrangements that may contain an embedded lease to determine whether IFRS 16 is applicable to them or not. So it's something where there's quite a big lead in time and quite a lot of work to be done. As I've said, it's been problematic across councils this year. So the issue here really is the job was done well, it was just done later.
Anybody? Yes, Councillor Wade.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, on page 38, we talk about insurances. I wonder if you could just elaborate. I'm interested in a bit about the reserve assurances, which are in the red. It's good that we have in this year good on the pension reserves, but can you just elaborate on the bit about the general reserves, because you don't mention that for 24-25. Is that in the same state? And could you just elaborate what you mean by the assurance? What is the bit that we need to improve for that, please?
So the fact that we aren't able to give assurance over reserves is purely as a result of the disclaimer that was issued in 22-23. So it's kind of the last thing that works through, because we didn't test transactions in 22-23 and transfers to and from reserves. We can't give you assurance over reserves. So in every single audit results report that I am presenting where a disclaimer has been issued previously this year, we're giving, maybe with one or two exceptions, and I mean one or two, no assurance in respect of reserves. We can tell you the reserves are correct in total because we've got pretty much complete assurance or nearly complete assurance over the top half of the balance sheet. What it's more difficult for us to do is to give you assurance over the split between usable and unusable reserves. We can do the pensions reserve because that's informed by the work of an actuary. So each year you assess a pensions asset or liability, and we can give you we review that work in totality, and we can give you complete assurance over the pensions reserve. So I suppose in answer to your question, this is not different at New Forest District Council to anywhere else. It's the most difficult area to recover following the issue of a prior year disclaimer, but it's something where in 25-26 we'll be looking to do some build back procedures to allow us to change the level of assurance that we give in that area.
In actual fact, this is a technicality, isn't it? If you put it simplistically, just to clarify that, isn't it?
Yes, it's as a result of not being able to test transactions in the 22-23 year.
Okay, anybody else? I've just a couple of things, if I may. And I think you've covered it, but I just would like it clear to me at least. On page 5, you list the following items relating to the completion of the audit procedure were outstanding at the date of the report. Now, I understand, am I right, that those are now done, and so we're going to be clear as far as this goes?
Yes, the audit is now complete, subject to the receipt of signed information following this committee. Okay,
good, thank you. Right, let me just see. I mean, yeah, I have to say that you get the impression sometimes reading this, there's a lot of red, you know, and it's sort of ineffective, outstanding, but it gives, I think, an impression that it's not as good as you have actually said it is here. Is that a fair comment?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, for example, you say here, quality and completeness of the draft financial statements, you've got red, ineffective.
I think that rating is justifiable. Those draft financial statements that were published on the Council's website didn't contain material adjustments relating to a new accounting standard. The final financial statements that are audited, fine.
Okay, all right, okay.
And I also, just on that point on factors impacting execution of the audit, it's important, I think, that we flagged these issues. So next year, we'll be working to a statutory backstop date that's not at the end of February, it's at the end of January. So we need to be complete earlier. The statements here are good and we can recover assurance. We just need to make sure that we've got arrangements that allow us to do it on a timely basis.
Okay. On page 19, this is the anticipate issuing a disclaimed 24-25 audit opinion. I understand that. Do you expect, I think you've said you hope the next one will not be disclaimed, is that right?
Yes, we've completed all of our planned procedures this year, and I think you can take a good degree of assurance from that. And the fact that we're not reporting significant misstatements, I think you can take a good degree of assurance from that. Because we've done all planned procedures this year, if we do all planned procedures next year, we would move you from a disclaimed to a qualified position.
Okay, thank you. On page 23 of your report, you say control deficiencies, and you talk about declarations of interests obtained annually from councillors, but they're not up to date on the council's website. Perhaps can I have a comment from Alan Bassoon on that?
Yeah, you certainly can, Chairman. So we do regularly ask members to update their declarations of interest, and the way in which we currently operate is that if there is no change, the current form as submitted is still left as the current form. I think, again, the auditors are suggesting that we might want to make some reference to the fact that we have gone through that process of reconfirming. So, again, just something that us as officers can take away and see whether there's something we can change in the background.
Okay, thank you. Right, let me just do one other thing here. That's done. Okay, I think we've addressed most of my concerns there. Has anyone got any other questions before we move on? Okay, thank you for that. We'd now like to go to item 6 on the agenda, which is the Auditor's Annual Report. Simon, that's you again. Sorry, it's out of order, but I was asked to change the order.
Thank you, Chair. No, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
So this is our draft, and it's necessarily draft Auditor's Annual Report, and it starts on page 193 of your papers. It's necessarily draft because we can't say it's fully complete until we've issued the opinion on the financial statements, which we intend to do later today. An initial draft of the report was issued electronically to the chair of the committee and the Section 151 officer at the end of last November to meet the NAO's publication deadline. The report you have today is pretty much consistent with that draft, but it's been updated to reflect the work and findings from the financial statements audit. The main purpose of the report is to set out our narrative commentary on the Council's value for money arrangements, which we do in Section 3, starting on page 208 of your papers. It then details any risks of significant weaknesses in the Council's arrangements or actual significant weaknesses in the Council's VFM arrangements. As a reminder, those arrangements cover financial sustainability, they cover governance, and they cover arrangements to ensure economy, efficiency and effectiveness in the way the Council uses its resources. We set out our findings in a tabular summary on page 209 of papers. So, in summary, there were no risks of significant weaknesses and no actual significant weaknesses. I would say that we did give serious consideration to whether the publication of statements that didn't include IFRS 16 entries was a significant weakness in arrangements. That would be in terms of governance and arrangements to support external financial reporting. But we've concluded that ultimately that it isn't. A large part of that was the fact that when it was adopted, the quality was very good. So it was something that we did consider, but we have concluded it's not a significant weakness. I will take the report as read. I know there's a lot to read in there, so I will stop and take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions on this section, item 6 on the agenda? No? Okay, well, I think you've got away with that one then, Simon. Thank you very much, anyway, for your attendance and your reports. I think we just have to note that, I think, is the heading. Okay, we now go back to item 5, which is the final annual financial report, which is Paul Whittles is going to talk us through that.
Thank you, Chair. So further to the previous agenda items, this report recommends that yourself as Chair of Audit Committee, in tandem with the Section 151 officer, are given authority to sign off the 24-25 accounts and letter of representation, as discussed by Simon. In addition, it seeks agreement that the leader and the Chief Executive sign the annual governance statement for 24-25, and this will enable us to submit the final audited accounts and letter of representation in good time to satisfy the backstop date of 27th of February 2026. One matter just to note is that in the pack under page 60 there is a typo regarding the date of today's meeting, so that will be updated prior to signatures being obtained. And finally, I'd just like to thank my team led by Lisa Conway in getting the work done to get us to this stage, and also Simon and his team for their support and collaboration throughout this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Has anyone got any questions on this? Again, it's a great pack of... I think you swamp us with reports. Anybody, any questions? I think we take it as read with that one correction on page 60. Do I have to sign this after this meeting?
Yes, please, Chair.
So you've got a corrected
version is ready.
Version ready. Okay. Thank you very much. Sorry?
It seems reasonable.
Yes. Right, we now come to item 7, internal audit report, which is Anthony. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. So this provides my progress report in relation to the 25-26 internal audit plan with reflecting progress to the end of December. If I note on agenda page 228, paragraph 3 of the covering report, it does mention the outcome of the external quality assessment, which is the next agenda item. So if there's any questions on that, if we could respectfully hold them off to the following agenda item, that would be appreciated. On agenda page 229, which is paragraph 5 of the covering report, at the time of reporting, it reflected that 34% of the agreed audit plan had reached reporting stages, and it also reflected that 6 reports had been finalised since the previous update to the committee. Sections, further information on the progress of each of the individual audits is shown in section 7 of the main body of the report, which is on agenda pages 237 to 8. On agenda page 241, which is paragraph 6 of the covering report, with further information provided, it confirms that all of the actions in relation to 7 previous audit review areas have now been completed, which is really good progress, and the level of overdue actions remains consistent and relatively low as previously reported. And there's further information on the overdue high priority actions and medium actions on agenda pages 242 through to 245. There are 2 proposed plan adjustments, as noted in the main body of the report, which is 1 addition and 1 withdrawal. The withdrawal was in and around the audit of the open spaces play areas, and the proposed addition was to look at the arrangements for the implementation of phase 3 of the waste collection service, focusing predominantly on the bin ordering. So that was the main pieces I wanted to draw to your attention, but happy to take any questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you. Anybody got any questions? Yes, Councillor Wade.
Yes, I've got 2 questions really. The first one is on the audit review. This is on page 237. It's limited town and parish council shared delivery arrangements. One of the criticisms that tends to come, not just about the district council, about the county as well, so let's put it this way, is that we don't always engage with town and parish councils as well as we could. And I just wonder if this is just a symptom of that particular issue.
No, the details of that review, that was all previously reported back to yourselves in the previous annual, the 24-25 annual conclusion report. The focus of that review specifically was all in and around the arrangements that were provided to the town and parish councils, predominantly in and around bin emptying and grass cutting and all of these things. And the review found that a lot of those arrangements hadn't really been formalised. So it wasn't an issue with the relationship itself.
It's more of a technical issue.
It was more in and around there being that clear understanding of what was being provided by both parties and obviously the associated costs of those arrangements.
Okay, I've got a second question. My understanding in other organisations of internal audits, they're also a great tool for continuous improvement. And I just wondered, where in the latest audit did you find anything that you thought, well, we could do that better? Because improving is the basis of giving better service to the public, to everybody.
Yep. So with the reviews as it currently stood at the time of reporting, you'll note there that in relation to the 25-26, where it's a couple of reviews which concluded with substantial assurance opinions, so essentially very, very watertight. Same on Treasury Management as well. The areas that have come out of those reviews so far that have concluded with reasonable assurance, there's really no sort of significant issues to bring to your attention. It's when we conclude with limited or no assurance opinions, which currently there haven't been any that have been formally concluded. It's where there's the real opportunities to really enhance and improve things. But at the time of reporting, as things stand, the areas that have come out are just, you know, enhancements to already good practice to really sort of drive things forward rather than it being issues.
So what you're saying is it's as good as it's going to get at the moment. Is that right, what you're trying to tell me?
Based on the work that's been concluded so far, things are good and there's been opportunities to improve in certain areas, but not really sort of significant issues. But with all of the reviews where any observations for improvement or opportunities for improvement or, you know, more sort of significant issues are identified, then as always we agree appropriate corrective actions with the management team to implement that then track through to conclusion. So once those actions have actioned, then obviously the improvements have been made.
Right, yeah, Janet.
Councillor Richards. I'm looking at page 242, which is talking about the playground policy, and it says that it would be considered by the place overview and scrutiny panel on the 15th of January, but I didn't see it being considered then, so is there a new plan?
Yeah, I think the paper wasn't quite ready, so I think actually something's going to be coming through to this audit committee for the March meeting as well. So yeah, it wasn't quite there for January, but officers are in the final stages of preparing that overview.
Thank you. So I was also wanting to ask about the play areas. Could we have an actual date when someone is going to go out and just check the safety of the play areas? Because this has been, we've been talking about this since, I think it's 31st of March last year, 24 even, not even last year. So could we just have a date for when someone's going to go and actually look at the play areas?
I can confirm they are regularly assessed and are being visited on a regular basis. This particular report was just in and around, again, some of those recording deficiencies that, again, we just know we need to make some improvements on. But yeah, rest assured, they are being assessed on a regular basis as it stands.
Okay, I just have one which is on the adjustment to the audit plan where we've withdrawn the open spaces and replaced it with the waste rollout. You know, given that the waste rollout will be completed by May this year, when are we going to see any outcome of this audit?
I'll be able to report that back to the next committee in next month.
So that will be reported in the March meeting.
All of the work on that audit now is complete. A draft report is with me, and I had intended to get it out this week, but a few things have cropped up, so that'll be with Alan and the management team next week.
Okay, thank you.
I thought I had.
So the definitions of what the opinions are provided on page 235 of the agenda pack. So it's basically that there's generally, you know, a good framework of governance, risk management and control, but there's either some minor areas of non-compliance or opportunities for improvement, but really not that there's sort of significant issues, gaps or deficiencies. There's just always, part of audit is always to identify areas for improvement. Obviously nothing ever sets still, so it's always important that things do continue to evolve and improve. And that's obviously generally reflective of those findings that, you know, it's not something to keep you awake at night on. Those are the limited and the no assurances, but there are always obviously changes that need to be taken into account that maybe haven't quite filtered through, or, you know, opportunities to improve really.
Can I just ask, how do you check clean streets?
So again, it's all of the policies and the procedures and all of the underlying activity that's undertaken to do it. So with some of those areas, it would be in and around if enforcement notices are served or penalty notices are served, then, you know, is it backed up by robust evidence? Is it clearly documented if there's then appeals to any of those notices that have been done? Is it again backed up by suitable evidence? So it's all of the policies, procedures, and the underlying framework, rather than us not going out and there's a bit of chewing gum down there. No, that's not our role. It's just obviously all of the arrangements in and around it.
Okay. Anybody else got any questions on this? Okay, thank you, Anthony. We'll move on to your second item, which is item 8 on the agenda, External Quality Assessment, Final Report.
Lovely, thank you. So, as members will be well aware, we're required to undergo an external quality assessment once every 5 years. Our previous assessment 5 years ago, so it was when this one was due, but it was also undertaken in the context of the new global internal audit standards that were introduced from the 1st of April 2025. So essentially we were being a full assessment against the brand new standards that had only recently come in. Really pleased to report that the external assessor concluded with a generally achieves overall audit rating. Now, a little bit of context behind that. If there's any element of any of the 52 principles where you're not fully achieved, then you can't achieve a full achievement rating overall. On 46 of the 52 areas, we did achieve a fully achieved assessment, and there were 6 areas where we generally achieved. Now, the IIA, who are the global standard setters, generally achieves as the global benchmark where they want everyone to get to. So, in effect, we're already there, and we're way in excess of what the expectation is for the global standard that they want everyone to get up to. So I think it's absolutely really great outcome. The assessor didn't make any formal recommendations for improvement, although there were some opportunities to improve, which we've addressed within, or we're going to address within the action plan that's provided for you in Appendix 2. And for full clarity, the assessor's report is provided in full to make sure we haven't just cherry-picked out all of the best bits and hidden the worst bits. So that's provided for you as Appendix A. So I'll pause there, Chairman, but happy to take any comments.
Thank you for that, Anthony. I think I just had, I don't think I have any questions on that. Has anyone got anything? Any pointed questions? No. Okay, thank you. So we'll note that report. Thank you very much.
Chairman, apologies. Just before you move on to the next item, just noting there was a recommendation on the previous item, which was an approval of the changes.
You're quite right. I missed that.
Yeah, could we just loop back?
I think I can. I'm going to under the internal audit progress report, we were asked to note it, but also to approve the proposed changes, which was the the withdrawal of the open spaces and the added of the waste rollout. Are we happy with that? Okay, thank you. Right, item 9, Treasury Management Strategy. Who's going to... Oh, right, okay. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, members. So this report introduces the proposed Treasury Management Strategy for the Council in 2026-27 and, if approved, the remainder of 2025-26. And this strategy provides the framework for how the Council's cash and debt portfolios will be managed. So like with all Treasury reports that we bring before this committee, there's a couple of scene-setting paragraphs in terms of the wider financial landscape, but with no objections, I'll just move straight on to the main topics in the report, if that's okay. So table 2 in the report, which is page 291 of the agenda pack, shows the balance sheet summary and the forecast for the period that the strategy covers. You can see that the capital financing requirement, or CFR, is forecast to rise over the period, along with a reduction in balance sheet resources. This has the effect of moving the Council from a net investments position at the end of the last financial year to a net borrowing position for the remainder of the forecast period. And that signifies the requirement to take on some additional external borrowing. So that requirement is outlined in slightly more detail in table 3, which shows the Council's liability benchmark for the forecast period. So by way of a brief refresher, this is effectively showing the minimum level of external borrowing required by the Council to manage its cash needs and capital plans over the forecast period. So the accompanying graph to that table shows that the Council's level of existing debt in comparison to that liability benchmark and the CFR, and the divergence of the lines on that graph does show that need to borrow materialising and increasing. In terms of the borrowing strategy itself, nothing has changed from the current year regarding the sources of borrowing and debt finance. On the investment side of the strategy, the maximum counterparty limit for secured investments will be £7 million, whilst for unsecured investments that counterparty limit will be £3.5 million, both of which remain unchanged from the current strategy. The updated Treasury prudential indicators are outlined in section 6 of the report, with only one very minor change to table 7 to reduce the amounts that the Council is permitted to invest beyond 12 months. And this reflects the wider trend of reducing investment balances and the requirement to have that cash more readily available. The December interest rate forecast from the Council's Treasury Management Advisor Arling Close is shown in Appendix A, with the key takeaway there being that they expect bank rate to be cut to 3.25% by the middle of this calendar year, and their latest forecast as of about a week ago remains the same. And then finally, the Q3 investment and borrowing position and the associated indicators are shown in Appendix B and C. And most importantly, you can see that the Council has been compliant with all the indicators in the year to date. So happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, anybody got any questions on this? Yes, Councillor Wade.
Again, I've got 2 questions actually. On the Appendix A, I notice you've got a central case. You've sort of covered all the options, an upside, a downside, and a middle of the road. Judging by the way the financial markets, which of those do you think is a more likely? And that because the finances, although we've got a few up and downs, it's been pretty reasonably plateaued.
So I would caveat that by saying that this is produced by Arling Close, our Treasury Advisor. This isn't something that we produce ourselves. I think the simple answer is the central case is the most likely case, given that it's the central case. The modelling that Arling Close does, the upside and downside risk are obviously worst and best case scenarios, but in their professional view, the most likely outcome is the central case that's presented in that appendix.
I've now got a more general question. As we move inexorably to LGR, I know we've got to have a Treasury management strategy, and we've got it here, and it's well put together, etc. No doubt about that. how is this affected by what's going to happen through LGR? Because it's towards the end of this year when the shadow authority has been decided upon, they then have an input into this. And I wondered do we understand how legally that works? Because they could come along and change significantly certain aspects of this if they wanted to. I'm sorry, this is quite a complicated question, but because we've got this and it's projected over a number of years, it's actually a question to...
Yeah, no, and I think it's encouraging, Malcolm. I think you're starting to think through some of these implications of what's around the corner in terms of LGR. I mean, ultimately, as things stand, this council is a sovereign authority until it's not. And so it still has a role and a responsibility to adopt its own strategies, its own, medium-term forecasts and everything else that goes with it. Obviously, there is a point at which there's some added oversight from either the Joint Committee or the Shadow Authority, but it's still this council that is proposing these strategies, these policies. It's almost just another layer of governance for the Shadow Authority at the right time to take stock, if you like, and agree that it agrees with what's being produced and prepared. But as I say, it doesn't take away the fact that this council still has a responsibility to plan its own forecasts, to plan its own strategies up until we don't exist.
I do understand that, and that's why I get that, is understand it. But in theory, they could change some of it, couldn't they? In theory, if they wanted to.
I think we have to go back to the timing. So ultimately, the Shadow Authority will be established in May 2027. Yeah. That will be after the date at which this council's Treasury strategy for 27-28 financial year would have already been adopted. So I think ultimately we've got to think that the role of the Shadow Authority is actually slightly more forward-looking for the new authority. So yeah, it's unlikely that they'd play a role in terms of suggesting updates to something that's already prior been approved.
Anybody else? Yes, Councillor Sullivan.
I'm just looking on the housing revenue accounts, CRF. It's rising dramatically over the next 3 or 4 years. Is that because we're buying, or is interest, or?
Yeah, again, I'm happy to help support that question. So yeah, the council's obviously adopted its strategy back in 2018 to want to increase its council house ownings. So obviously the aspiration for 600. Obviously in the early stages of that strategy, we were utilising our internal cash balances to best effect. And so that's why we've seen our reserve balances come down. We're now at that tipping point of needing to now supplement the delivery of that strategy and the spending of that money with external finance. So yeah, it's all in accordance with adopted strategy. And obviously, I will just mention as well, the thing around the corner is obviously the significance of the decarbonisation requirements as well. So again, we're already having to step up our capital spend in terms of decarbonisation. So again, that's adding to the CFR requirement at the same time.
And the local plan will probably have an effect on this as well, won't it?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say when the council adopted its strategy for the 600 new homes, that was on the assumption that a number of strategic sites would be coming forward. Obviously, that's not quite been the case, so it's been a bit more difficult, I think, to achieve that 600. But yeah, as more strategic sites come forward, we've got a couple of quite large Section 106 sites that are now coming forward where we are actively purchasing those sites and those homes. And again, yeah, all in accordance with the strategy.
Questions? No.
Microphone, Chairman, please. Thank you.
Recommendation on page 283 is that we recommend to full council item 1, the strategy, and authority is delegated to the Section 151 officer. Are we all agreed with that? Okay, thank you. Right, item 10, Paul Whittles.
Thank you, Chair. The investment strategy before you sets out how the Council intends to manage and govern its investment activities for 26-27. This covers both the Treasury management investments as covered by the previous agenda item, recognising the continued shift towards the Council requiring more debt and therefore naturally reducing cash position which may inhibit this. But it also covers the non-Treasury activity, which is our service and commercial investments. These includes the loans and equities provided to our wholly owned subsidiary companies and also our commercial property portfolio. Details of the company investments can be found within tables 1 and 2 on pages 324 and 325 of the pack. And the list of commercial properties are shown in table 3, also on page 325. Both have remained fairly static in recent years, and members should also note that 2 assets that were previously considered commercial are no longer, and these have been declassified and removed accordingly. And whilst there are some gains and losses within individual assets at that level, the portfolio as a whole has increased in its asset value year on year. A strategy must be approved by full council, and Audit Committee is asked to recommend to full council the approval and adoption of this investment strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Anyone got any questions on this? Yes, Councillor England.
Thank you very much. On section 13, on the table where we have the property, I notice unit 800 Empress Park. We used to have another location there, which I think was the car park. Is that gone?
This is table 13, is it? You're looking at?
I mean, item 5. Yeah, sorry. Is that the same asset? Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you. Okay, well, just very quickly on table 3, page 325. I think there are a couple of items being removed from this table, is that right?
That's correct, Chair. The Queensway Depot is no longer a commercial asset as it currently stands due to it being used for operational purposes by the Council, and also as a result of the IFRS 16 adjustments, the New Forest Enterprise Park has also been declared.
The famous IFRS 16. Yeah, okay. And one we've talked about before, the new Platinum Jubilee Business Park, just to, I mean, that has shown a reduction, and is that because some of the properties are not let, is that?
Yes, Chair, the valuation will be a consequence of the income streams generated on that site, and there are a couple of office units still remaining to be filled.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No. Councillor O'Sullivan.
The Station Road one, which is 5 million, has not gone up or gone down. Why is that static?
There needs to be a new rent review to alter that assessment, so the assessment just remains the same. A new rent review would determine a new valuation, but that review hasn't concluded yet.
Yeah, okay. Just on sorry, Councillor Wade. Okay, I'm just going to say Hardley Industrial Estate has gone up significantly in value. Why? Is that anything to do with the new waste depot, or is that some other factor?
It's completely separate from the depot, so it's all to do with the income streams generated from those other sites on that industrial estate.
So it's gone up because we've let...
We've done rent reviews, and therefore increases to the income received by the council would then drive additional asset value.
All right, thank you. Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question about our overall scrutiny and governance of our investment strategy, which the council reapproved in 2022. How does it compare to other authorities? Do we know? I mean, are we stronger than other authorities, weaker, or so forth? I'm just somewhat curious.
I'll be perfectly frank, I'm not aware how we compare directly.
Pardon?
I'll be perfectly frank, I'm not aware how directly we compare to other authorities. Our strategy is laid out for our benefit and we're adopting
It's just
it
unique to us then.
and using it to our best advantage. But as has been explained previously, there's limited opportunities at the moment. Business cases are hard to stack up to make new investment possible. So there's mainly a maintain and hold position at the moment.
Okay, thank you. The recommendation is we are asked to recommend to full council that this investment strategy be approved. Are we happy to do that? Okay, thank you. Right, item 11, Principal Risk Register. This was going to be Karen Webber, but I understand Paul is going to...
Yes, unfortunately Karen can't join us this morning, so I shall take this one. So the Principal Risk Register sets out the most strategically significant risks facing the Council and the mitigations in place to resolve them. A full review has been completed involving updated service risk registers that feed information into the Principal Risk Register. And additionally, EMT has provided some deep dive reviews during October of last year and more recently last month. This has led to some revised scoring, wording and mitigations, which in the appendices you'll see items struck through or new entries in blue text for ease of reference. Key changes to be noted by members include that 4 risks have been updated with their inherent or residual risk ratings, these being PR4, business continuity, PR5, health and safety, PR16, planning and regulatory system upgrade, and PR17, the climate and ecological emergency, all of which have seen a reduction in their residual risk scores. This reduction indicates improved controls and assurances are in place, but all these risks will continue to be monitored going forward. And perhaps more significantly, it is proposed to remove PR15 transformation programme, now that it is largely superseded by the LGR work undertaken. And also the removal of PR10, the social housing regulatory compliance. And this is following positive assurances from the mock inspection, and this risk is still to be managed at a service risk level rather than a corporate level. Additionally, there will be removal of PR19, the recruitment and retention risk, as this will be consolidated within PR9, reference to LGR, given the impact LGR is having on that particular aspect. 2 new risks are being proposed to be added. One of those is PR15, political environment. This reflects the increased uncertainty due to LGR and devolution decisions, which are expected next month, plus the upcoming elections at county and beyond. This risk considers potential impacts on decision-making, strategic direction and resource prioritisation as a consequence. And the second new risk to be added is health and well-being of tenants in temporary accommodation. This has been escalated from service level due to rising homelessness pressures and the increasing complexity of needs in that area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just quickly, just to refresh our perhaps understanding of it, can you just clarify how you're moving from the service risk level to the principal risk level, and who is actually deciding what should move?
Of course. So there are over 30 service risk registers that are managed at service level. Those within their right are entitled to recommend to EMT potential ones that they believe should be elevated to a corporate level. But as mentioned, EMT do take a thorough look at these risks, corporate risks, quarterly, and as a consequence may make recommendations to declassify some, or additionally with the awareness across the organisation, suggest new ones should be included. So this is an amalgamation of many risks at a service level brought up to a strategic corporate level for consideration here.
Okay, and that's the EMT doing that
EMT
process, and then it comes to this body. Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I just want to go back to the one on people. but it's about working practices. And I see the mitigation is that we've done a couple of, we've looked at conditions resulting in the waste service, and they looked at a recent essential user allowance, etc., etc. But the risk event is that because we're a large and diverse organisation, simplistically different people are doing things in different ways. Just to sort of articulate it. And it says HR are tasked with carrying out an audit of working practices. But the question I want to ask is, how did we get in a state where we feel different people are doing things differently when we should be a corporate organisation with a corporate approach to issues?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, Councillor Wade, and I think ultimately we have to think about the size and scale and just the vastness of services that a district council produces and provides to residents. I think one of my favourite phrases from one of our assistant directors is actually when you take a step back, it's actually a bit bonkers, isn't it, to think that a single organisation deals with, you know, taxi licensing and waste collection and planning and everything else that goes with it. So I think inherently, you know, there are then going to be slightly unique and unstandardised working practices. Obviously, what we're trying to do here and sort of highlight through this inclusion of this item on the risk register is almost just having an appreciation that that is inevitable. But we are obviously trying our best, if you like, to try and corporately align as many, you know, working practices as we can where it's absolutely feasible to do so. But the risk just recognises that there is always going to be a degree of difference in, you know, how a street scene operator works compared to a payroll manager. You know, they are very different in terms of how they work and operate.
I can understand difference between different disciplines, but are we saying within disciplines there are variability? So let's say one street scene operator in one town operates differently to one another, which actually could be quite understandable, but it's how do we rectifying it by doing an HR audit, I suppose, is one way, but you would think that we have a set of working practice, standard operating procedures that are consistent across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. I think within teams and departments, absolutely, yeah. Standard operating procedures exist in street scene, in refuse, in you know, all of those areas. So the staff working in those distinct service areas will absolutely be working in a consistent manner.
I have just a question or a point, perhaps, on PR 15, political environment. I'm not sure that we should be highlighting it a risk to the council, political change. I mean, we live in a democracy, and this is something that's going to happen. And I don't see that should be considered a risk. I mean, we should be prepared to deal with a change in the political landscape. I don't know what you know, whether you wish to comment on that or you don't agree.
Well, I think it's just that's the risk of us being prepared. So we're making sure the resources are in place and we can react accordingly to potentially decisions either slowing down because of it or potentially changing tact because of it. So we just need to be prepared as an organisation to be able to still deliver the services off the back of it.
Yes, Councillor Rackham.
Well, I kind of agree. There's other local authorities that I work for who acknowledge the fact that could mean a personnel change every time there's an election of any sort, and to be prepared for it so that you've got some sort of continuity on through, I think is very sensible, actually. Could I, whilst I've got you, go back to the working practices? Is it possible to maybe make that a little bit clearer, to link it to the success of those working practices in the different areas? So what you're saying here is something quite different to the way it reads, I think. And the way it reads is that we want to make sure that everybody from every service works in the same way, which is just ridiculous. You don't want to do that. But there's nothing to link that to the other services to say, you know, to all the services, to say how successful they are or point to which ones you're talking about. So something just to clarify that I think would be really helpful, actually. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, noted. We'll take that on board. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, Councillor Sullivan.
I can't say anything about customer services, and particularly with the fact that we're changing the system now this month. Should that be in there somewhere?
It would have been considered. I mean, we can take it away and consider inclusion of it. At this point in time, it wasn't deemed a principal risk. So I'll take that feedback back and
changing to a new system will
but
be a bit of a risk.
I accept the challenge, and I'll take that away, and we'll look into seeing where that should be increased to a principal risk.
Yep.
Can I just ask about the PR17? Ecological emergency, I mean, just concerned about the flooding and our neighbours in the national park. It's their major consideration is in fact, they see they're at a great problem with anything to do with the climate. And we've got it as green. Is that, how do you analyse that?
Yeah, I think on that one, if I can just help, because obviously we did have a fairly good conversation at EMT on this one. I think what we are recognising in the scoring here is that we do recognise the significance of the likely impact of an environmental event. However, what we're more concerned with here is again, it's more in and around how the council is able to step up its resources and I suppose deal with its own strategic approach to its climate and nature emergency. So it's not necessarily the environmental event itself. This is more in and around capturing how the council is able to respond and react to its own responsibilities under that climate and change emergency. And I think at the moment, with the actions that we've got in place, so you know, with a live task and finish group, we continue to update and assess that climate and ecological emergency action plan. We have financial resources in place. We've got some additional posts in place now. So there's a lot the council is doing, which is why then the likelihood of achieving the risk event we're seeing as a reduction, hence why there's a green residual score. But yeah, recognising that it's difficult to sort of comprehend in many ways, knowing what we know about flooding events and that sort of thing, but that's not quite what this is aimed at.
Okay, it just seems a little bit confusing with with our neighbours so concerned, and to be on top of it like this is almost like saying we're in control, but it's far from that, as we know.
Okay, has anybody else got any questions? Yes, Councillor Rackham.
I'd like to comment on that, actually. So obviously we have an coastal erosion plan from Lymington, but we don't have one going up the waterside at all. I think that hasn't been pushed by NFDC, although it may not be NFDC that ultimately completes that. There's no real push, I don't think, from what I can gather, to make sure that that's in place any quicker than it will be anyway. And that seems to me a huge part of our climate and ecology emergency. Thank you.
Okay, can I ask, are you suggesting that when it says the residual risk score is low, you're disagreeing with that, are you?
I'm saying it shouldn't be green.
Yeah, so you're saying it should be orange.
Yes.
Exactly.
Well, you know, that's a fair point. I mean,
Chairman, if I can just offer something on that, I mean, recognising that this authority has certain responsibilities in terms of coastal erosion plans, but actually ultimately that lies with the Environment Agency. So we don't necessarily want to reflect a risk on our principal risk register that isn't actually our responsibility as an organisation. It lies with the Environment Agency. So we are playing a supporting role, but it's not our risk, which is why it's not necessarily represented or reflected in the scoring.
Okay, that's a fair point. Yes, Paul.
And then just to draw members' attention to principal risk number 2, which is the more comprehensive, overarching emergency planning risk, and that is set at medium. So some of those factors will feed into that risk.
Councillor Wade.
Chairman, I just want to challenge that comment that it's not our risk, because we own land on the coast, on the water side. We own, for example, there's the parts of Hive where the Scout Hut is. We own a promenade. We own significant other these little pockets. Therefore, if there isn't a plan to stop them flooding, it's a risk to this council. And I know their argument has always been that we own the land to the west of Lymington, and I get that. I understand why we're doing all the work there. But in addition to that, if we own land on the water side, on the coast, it is a risk to us. Because the promenade in Hive is NFDC owned. The area where the Scout Hut is NFDC owned, and that's right on the forefront. We know that we have rising sea levels projected, and we do have flooding at the moment. So therefore, there is a genuine risk. And I think it's easy to wash over this. And I know on the sustainability panel, we have engaged about having a strategic plan for the area from Ealing to Lymington, and it requires the Environment Agency and the rest, and a lot of input. Well, we're responsible for the coastline, but not for the actions. I think it's a grey area, and I understand the Environment Agency is the principal element there. But as we own land there, it should be a risk. Surely, it should be orange, because if we did own the land, fair enough. But we do own parts of the coast, so it should be.
I think we would ask that this is reviewed, I think, at the next EMT review of the risk register, because I think Councillor Wade and Councillor Rackham have made good points on this. So I'd ask you to look again at that.
Yeah, more than happy to. And again, that's the reason we're here in this committee this morning, is for members to be able to have a space to challenge some of these assumptions. Again, the only thing I'd say is that we're slightly more probably focused on what we consider an immediate risk. Yeah. You know, when we think about climate change and sea level rises, we're talking about 100-year risk. Yeah. So again, we'll take
we understand that, but let's just take a step back and reconsider that again. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to say I do actually endorse that because we own the marina as well. And there's also not just the assets that we own, it's the risk to life. And it would be 2024, when I was the Hampshire County Councillor, I got put in charge, supposedly, of stopping the water coming to Lymington. Luckily enough, there was a wind shift and Milford-on-Sea got decimated. But it just shows you how things, I'm not saying we can actually stop that, but it was complete chaos when I got the phone call at 5 o'clock to be told I was in charge till the police turned up, the fire brigade was coming from Wales, and also the army were coming after they'd finished doing the sandbags at Lymington. Well, there was nothing we could do, but we were just there and it was hideous. But as I say, there was a wind shift which saved us, but decimated Milford, so everyone moved to Milford then. So it's that sort of sporadic event that happens that you don't want to happen, but when it does, it's absolute chaos. Thank you.
Okay, perhaps you look at this in conjunction with the emergency planning risk and, you know, consider the two. Okay. Well, we're asked to recommend this to, is it to the Cabinet or to, where are we? We're given feedback, so I think I'd like you to note those and to consider the principal risk register updates and recommend adoption by Council subject to the comments that we've made. Okay? We're all happy with that? Okay, thank you. Right, we come on to item 12, work plan, which is at the end of the pack. One page. Right, has anyone got any comments on that? Any additions or reductions? Don't laugh. We don't want any additions. Anyone got anything else to add? No? Okay, thank you. We'll, and we're going to get a playground audit report, yeah? Okay, and we're going to get a progress report on the waste rollout. Okay. Right, thank you very much. I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.